This is SaaS Therapy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of SaaS Therapy, the show where we help you save your most important business relationships, your customers. I'm your host, Todd Kirk. I'm joined by my vacation-loving compadre, Casey Trujillo, who I don't know where he's going next, but he's usually somewhere fun.
New York.
That's where you're heading next? You're going to go
Yeah.
see some Broadway plays in the city?
Oh my gosh. If you have not seen The Outsiders, so for people that are old like myself, say I think you have to be above like 45 to have read the book The Outsiders when you were in school. They made it into a play and it is spectacular. So
Okay.
I'm going to go out, see that, see some other plays, and then eat a lot of good food that I'll regret later.
Love it. You can always work it off, Casey. It'll be good. Well, we are joined by an awesome guest. Super pumped to have on Talya Reynolds, who is Director of Customer Education, Leader Director of Education at ClearCo. I don't know what your awesome title is. Tell me, Talya, what do they call you?
Head of Product Education.
Head of Product Education. Much better than Director. Lame. Talya, great to have you on. Welcome to SaaS Therapy.
And so good to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Okay, so what spurred this? And again, I'm dating myself one more time. For those people that have never seen The Notebook, it is a fantastic movie that everyone should watch. It is just one of the best love stories in the world. But Talya wrote a love letter on LinkedIn that went really well. And I just want you to explain your love letter, who you wrote it to, what was all about, like let people in on your version of The Notebook that you just recently sent out.
Ooh, I love how you framed that. Yeah, so I have been working with LMSs for nearly a decade. And we're in this really fun, intimidating, who knows what's going to happen era with AI. And it's really opened up what learning can really look like. And I think a lot of us instructional designers, product education, customer ed, employee enablement folks have known what good education looks like for a long time, but we haven't had the systems and the tools to really support that. Enter AI, and suddenly a lot of the constraints are disappearing rapidly because of the sophistication of what you can do with AI and really simple ways to break down, data walls to meet learners more in an omni-channel fashion. There's a lot of debate amongst, my peers about whether the LMS is going to die as a result. The fact that you can chat with an LLM and get your answers, does that mean that the way people will want to learn will be different? They won't want to go to a destination. And I don't think that the LMS is dying, or rather, LMS as it is today is definitely dying, but there is an opportunity for the right company out there. And I did get a lot of people commenting saying, companies up to cool stuff who are thinking a lot about what I'm talking about. But this opportunity to become more of a learning intelligence system that takes into account the whole learner. And I think that we're actually going to see a demand for these types of education experiences increase rather than decrease, because the desire to upskill and keep up with the pace of change is going to put a lot of pressure on people. And destination learning will keep that niche if they can evolve.
Okay. I love it. And I love that you're sticking a stake in the ground, because I agree that there is a lot of change coming in this industry's way over the next decade, probably. There's a lot of angst and fear and worry that I see people feeling as they think about that. But I think there's a really optimistic opportunity when there's change. You can choose to like freak out and like stick your head in the sand or run away or complain and tell the world why all these changes are really bad, or you can figure out how to embrace it. And so it sounds like you're trying to take a really measured approach, but also saying, well, like, how can we utilize the changes in the world to make it better? So in your world, do you feel like you have a vision? I mean, I read your LinkedIn post too, so I'm maybe setting you up a little bit there, but like, what do you want to see? Like, what does this learning intelligence system look like in your mind?
Yeah. I mean, we think about intelligence systems. You have Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, all remembering your actions, your conversations, your experiences, what frustrates you, what you don't like, what you do like. Imagine that as a learner, right? Imagine a system that recognizes where you need to upskill, where mastery is still warranted, what's brand new to you but critical that you master. It scaffolds the information. It automatically creates a plan based on the skills you need to have, your goals as a customer, as an employee, as a partner. and it automatically creates a whole ecosystem of learning just for you as an individual. And it takes into account your learning preferences, but it also challenges you a bit too, because we need systems that you're also seeing. I don't know how much y'all play with Claude, and I know a lot of Claude users who are listening to this will know exactly what I'm talking about. Is Claude's really pushing back lately? You can prompt with it and work with it, and it's questioning the decisions that you're making. A really interesting choice for the reasoning model. And we need some of that pushback as well as learners. And so having a system that is considering how it's going to challenge you as well, take those frustration signals, give you a beat, know when to come back, know how to do, spaced interval learning is what that's called, to help facilitate deeper learning, more masterful, skillful experiences. And then there is that, right, that behavioral ecosystem that means it has to connect into the other tools that we're using. So if I'm an employee, it means I need to have that learning influence how perhaps I'm using Salesforce or these other tools. Maybe my company's all gung ho on Lovable or Claude, and I need to learn how to use that efficiently. It also could map into product usage, choices that I make as an advocate, as a user. So now I'm expanding this learning ecosystem to track what the behavioral changes are over time as I work with my tool stack, as I work with my stakeholders, as my career evolves and grows with, the suite of tools I'm using. So that's where I would love to see it go. And that's why I think of it more as an intelligent system. It's adapting to you, just like we see LLM do already, just scaled out to touch the breadth and depth of who you are as a learner.
Okay. So I'm loving this. I'm digging this. But like Todd said at the beginning of this conversation before we jumped on the call, we love to make this just conversational. So obviously if we're talking with friends, we challenge each other because we're like, hey, I like that. But okay, have we thought about this and how would you might approach it? So this is questions for two of you. And I'm going to stick in another reference of a movie or a play here. So I've already hit Outsiders, then I went to The Notebook. Now I'm going to Fiddler on the Roof. Again, you
Oh.
have to be like 80 years or older to know what Fiddler on the Roof is, I think. And so I'm really revealing my age. But there's the song that he sings, right? Tradition, right? And I think that's a challenge we're going to run into because
Mhm.
here's something that I see as I work with organizations, is I'm the center of the universe.
Mhm.
Microsoft is the most important product I use at the company. And then
Mhm.
walk over to let's say Zoom or Slack, or every software vendor thinks they're the most important software out there. So I love the learning intelligence system, but as a user, I'm using 10 applications.
Yep.
So am I going to go to 10 systems, 10 learning intelligence systems? Or are all these software vendors actually going to finally care about me as the user?
Mm.
Or in a way in which I can search this and get suggestion and coaching and prompting, but I'm getting from all of it. And I'm not having to go to 70 different websites to try to learn something. Like, how do you get the customer education professional to understand that the play isn't no longer just yourself? It's the entire tech stack that someone might be working with. Is that even possible? Is that feasible? Is that going beyond AI where people's brains explode or
I mean, I love what you're saying. I love what you're saying. I think that's a true learner-centered experience if it's expanding the program reach of in making suggestions based on other companies' content to help support my understanding. I think though the basis of that question assumption relies on software staying the same though. What we're seeing already is this approach of headless software. I think a lot of the industry is probably headed towards some cannibalization. We're going to lose some software companies. Some are going to have to rapidly evolve. And so then it really puts the question of how are people learning these tools, right? Are they learning to act? Are they learning to use judgment? Are they learning to basically be an orchestrator, a conductor of all of these agents working on their? So I love what you're saying. I think it's possible entirely to have a system that does that when you think about the whole user experience and you think about the learning journey as a whole, which means if I'm a product company, then I'm not just thinking about my product. I'm thinking about what is the workflow, the entire end to end workflow that I'm asking my user to go through. So, go back to my days at Pendo. Well, it's important I know how to do stuff with Pendo and show my leadership team that I can do things with Pendo. But what matters more is how well can I use BigQuery and Salesforce, and how well can I query these data systems, use data and presentation skills on, Figma or Canva to illustrate, the success that I'm having. Or let's step back and look at the storytelling skill required for me to do that, or the data investigation skills required to do that, right? So I think if companies step back and they say, what's the workflow, the whole workflow, not just with our product, but how does this fit into the lifestyle of our learner? Then yes, ideally, hopefully we should see some holistic evolution of how we train people, which means it's not to functionality, but it's to the experience, the job to be done, is what we like to call it.
I
But
love
Todd, what do
that
you have to
so
say?
much. Well, I mean, I just want to say preach. So good. So good. The thing that is, it's so hard though, because I've noticed so many people in product and customer education who see themselves as the center of the universe. They
Mm,
don't see the user as the center of the universe. And there's like a sense of self-preservation that's necessary if you work for a software company to think, well, my goal isn't necessarily to help the user do their job better. I have to get them to use my software so that they keep it, right?
yep.
And so they don't always think about it in terms of like how the user needs to do their job and how they need to be successful and what they need to do to get there. And now I'm going to play I was trying to figure out, this is going to sound really dorky, but Casey was coming up with movies. So I was trying to figure out how it could go even older than Fiddler on the Roof. And so my mind went to the silent movie Metropolis. It's like a really famous movie from 1927. So 100 years ago, it was set in our day, right? So
Mhm.
they were 1927. They were trying to look ahead to 2026. And the whole movie is about a weird inventor and fights between the rich and the poor and building robots that are after this
Exactly.
prophetess who sees the future. It's really weird, and it's German, and it's a silent movie. But the reason why I bring it up, don't you love this, Casey? Casey's like,
Casey's
oh my gosh,
dying of
says
laughter
again.
over there.
So this whole point, right, is if you look at that movie, there's the whole idea of what people tend to do is they're always at war with each other, right?
Yeah.
There's class divides, there's technology divides. We have conflicting outcomes that we all want to have, and so everybody seems to kind of be fighting at odds with each other. So like your vision, right? If you're the robot prophetess here in Metropolis, right? You're saying where we should be going, but there tends to be, protest and rebellion and fight against that because we're fearful for our own self-preservation. So like
Yeah.
this is a really long setup to say like, what do we do to help people get over that fear, that rebellion, that fight against this change that might be coming?
Oh man, I mean, it's probably not the most fun answer, but I'll just take a page out of Mel Robbins' book and say, let people be afraid, let people criticize, let people, drag their heels, because at the end of the day, the cost is your company. So the cost is your job. The cost is so much higher, I think, for the folks that drag their feet. I mean, I just saw last week on LinkedIn that Pendo and Atlassian just partnered. If you knew the history of the relationship between these two companies, it's kind of a funny story because Atlassian is a builder, so they bring on other products, they end up building those products, and then they churn and they have these huge contracts. It's like, I mean, Pendo's felt that pain from Atlassian, but here they are building bridges over software to make the experience better for the learner and to double down in the industry together. So we're going to keep seeing other companies do that. We just saw the Anthropic partner with Gainsight. So we're seeing these companies already combining. We've been seeing it also for a while with companies consolidating into tech stacks. So it's an all-in-one software solution. Soon, I think we're going to start seeing way more partnerships. So I think to the folks who are at leadership positions or companies who are afraid, that's robbing you of your creativity. We're going there with or without you. For me, I've had some really strong feelings about AI, but it's where we're headed. I would rather have some intentional, heart-centered leadership at the corner that I can own to the best of my ability. So I'd say to those folks, it's like, well, are you afraid of? And I'd also push back, and this may be a little bit risky, but do you love your job? Who loves their job? A lot of people are here at the end of the day to work, to live, to live to work, not to do the other way around. And so for me, I look at what's happening in the industry and I'm like, okay, I'm down for it. I don't love this
Mm.
industry. I love what it can do and what it brings and how energizing it is. I appreciate my skills, but I wouldn't sit here and be like, I love every job I've ever had. No, I love the fact that I get to live life with every job that I've had. And so, how do we want to live life? I think is the better question. And how do you want to get involved in living the best life? So, I take it a little direction that you probably didn't expect. And it's a bit of a risky statement, but it's how I feel about it. So, I'll just leave that there for y'all to pick over and dig into if you want.
Well, this is SaaS therapy, so it's therapeutic to say it out loud
Thank
and
you.
therapeutic for people to hear, right?
I knew I had permission.
That was why we created this podcast, is because it's these things that we want to say out loud, but sometimes, you don't feel like you're in a space to be able to do it. So thank you for sharing that. So as you have recently taken over this new role, how are you thinking about doing this a little bit differently? Like what's going on in your head of how you might approach this? Because obviously you wrote a little love letter out to the LMS saying, hey, we need to change some things. You're now taking over customer ed. Like, I know you're just getting started, but what's in your brain and how you might want to start in approaching this a little bit differently than what you maybe you've done in the past?
Yeah, it feels an intentional start matters more than ever. I'm thinking a lot about headless learning, about headless software in general, and how we need to meet two audiences. We need to meet the machine, the agent, and we also need to meet the human learner. And we'll continue to have a demand on both of those needs. And I think that demand will continue to be intertwined as well. So I'm thinking a lot about how do I come into ClearCo and I take their existing infrastructure and make it agentic friendly? How do I make it accessible in an LLM? How do I make sure that, Casey, if you're learning about our product and you're chatting, with ChatGPT, that my course content gets recommended to you and you're
Mm,
prompted to learn? Actually kind of harkens back to what you were saying earlier, that I think, these LLMs might accidentally do for us, is bring all this learning content into where we're doing our research or making decisions or working. So I'm thinking about how do I map these over to scale for an agent and to also scale for a human. At ClearCo, I have this really unique opportunity to help build their intelligence system. So they're working with talent management from end to end. They just bought an LMS themselves. So can I actually help inform the product roadmap for how we're developing and challenging the status quo? I think that ClearCo has an incredible opportunity to become the first talent intelligence system if they are as excited about that as I am, and we share that excitement, which is why I ended up choosing this company. So I'm also thinking about how do I engage with other folks in my industry, especially L&D folks, hiring managers, folks who are dealing also with talent issues, whether it's upskilling their current talent force or finding top talent for in need demand jobs now, to really ground myself in the problems they're solving, to see what would a learning intelligence system look like for an employee. So I'm putting my product hat on more so than I ever have in the past. And I actually think that maybe that's what AI has been asking us to do, is put down what we're used to doing and put on our product hats and become product managers for ourselves and for the companies that we're working at within, our lane. So that's where my head is at right now. But obviously, I got to turn over to some rocks and see what's there for me once I actually get started.
Yeah, I was going to ask how you feel like the role of product and customer education is going to change over the next couple of years. Like, today I would say a lot of the people in the field are instructional designers and they're spending all their time mapping out curriculum and writing scripts for videos or writing
Yeah.
documentation or whatever that might be. But if AI is going to be able to jump in and at least dramatically reduce the amount of time it takes to do those things, well, then what should your time be spent doing? And so being a product manager sounds like maybe your first answer, but could you see or do you predict any other ways where you would anticipate the way the job changes? Like what these teams
Yeah.
should be doing over the next few years and how they spend their time?
Yeah, absolutely. So you need the system architect the educational layer for your agent. So as companies release more agents, what we're seeing is they're quite dumb. Even ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, all of our tools are quite dumb without a lot of contextual engineering. And so I think instructional designers are going to become more context engineers. They're going to be the ones who are programming that education layer and validating and confirming it's working. I like to think about us becoming more of learning scientists and designing experiments for AI to learn against. There's some really cool research out there about what happens when you set AI loose in a container with really clear parameters and things they can and can't do, and the amount of self-teaching and education they can do. So I think that we're being asked to understand machine learning more, the tenets of, agentic AI. And that's the one component, right? And that continues to help the orchestration layer of an agent to be more intelligent, to have the parameters and the context to act. Instructional designers are really good at the who, what, when, where, why, how. So creating that layer to fuel the agent, if product and engineering start flexing those people into those roles, they don't need to hire context engineers. You have instructional designers. They have the same kind of training. We're just asking them to do it differently. And if it's a Claude, right, it's markdown files, which means most chances are your instructional designers already know how to do that work. Then there's the second component, right, which is you need to train the workforce. And this is where I think about employees, along with your customers, of course, too. But you have to train your workforce to also understand those agents, to troubleshoot those agents, to know how to, vet the information and correct them when they're wrong. So that means you need to understand how it works. You still need to understand the product or the ecosystem that you're working in. And now your level of technical learning has to go a bit higher because you have to be willing to flag and course correct these agents as an orchestrator of them. So then there's these additional skills, right, that require those training programs to stay really important. That's why I think we won't see LMS necessarily die. We'll just see a new version come out. Whether they call it LMS, I think they should hopefully move on from that name. Will be interesting to find out. But that means, creating those centers of learning will still be really important to help people understand programming of agents and orchestration and all of those elements that I just named. So we become essentially trainers of the agent. We can essentially become the intelligence layer, and we can still function in those L&D roles to help humans develop in those programs. A little bit of, a lot of the same and a faster clip of how it looks, I would say.
Okay. Oh my gosh. This has been so insightful. And I will say, as I've talked with customer education professionals, you are one of the first people I've ever talked to that have a real vision.
Thanks.
Just so you know, most people are not taking that approach. I think most customer education I don't know, just some of their behaviors are more traditional, more cautious. They don't just jump all in. They think through things, and all those things have that benefit. You are like, you're going to push the edge in everything, which I love because you're like, we got to adapt. It is now the time to adapt.
Yeah. I will honestly say I learned that the hard way. And I think that's important to share is that I actually had, my CRO at Pendo go to my boss and say, what is this team doing? Why do they matter anymore? And it was because I was trying to bring AI into existing systems. I wasn't realizing that AI has blown up those systems. There's no real rules that apply anymore, especially if your company has embraced AI fully but hasn't shown you what that means. So I was scared for my team and my job. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to reinvent how I'm thinking about everything. So it came on the back of some critical feedback that I'm glad my boss passed on to me because it lit a fire. And, now here I am hearing this from you. It's amazing. And I'm getting more podcast interviews for the same reason. So so big thanks to that CRO who was willing to be like, what the heck are they doing over there?
That is amazing. And I love that story. And thank you again for sharing that. I see, two things as one, people that are in position to make these type of changes, yourself, getting that conversation going. Todd always talks about this is the challenge of the last mile. So you make the change, you do these things, but at the end of the day, there's a Casey Trujillo in American Fork, Utah, sitting down at his laptop, and he's being told he needs to use AI better. And I don't know if I am. I don't even know aware of these different tools and abilities that you're talking about. So how do you think you might approach that getting to that user level and getting them to make a change? I remember when my wife first started in the health industry, there was some data point that when doctors told people that you are going to die in the next year unless you change something, only 14% of people would make a change,
Yeah,
even though death was on the line.
totally.
So
Yeah.
how do you think you'll approach that? You make all these changes, you make it even simpler. You make it so it's just like prompting, asking questions, you're delivering this learning intelligence layer. How do you get the user to be intelligent? How do you think you might approach that?
That's such a good question. I've been thinking a lot about the adoption model, right, that you see for companies, which is, you have your early innovators up to your laggards. I think that companies have that same thing. A few things come to mind. First, I think that OpenAI, Claude, or Anthropic, they're actually going to have to start figuring this out too. When we look at their usage models and how costly it's getting, the fact that Claude pushes back sometimes really upsets me because I'm like, you're literally wasting my money right now. I don't need you to ask me questions. I know what I'm talking about. So, and we don't have an answer in the US for the infrastructure issues that AI and the servers required are causing. Usage is growing up, skyrocketing every single month, and we're pushing new. So it's just going to get more and more and more expensive. So I think the urgency is going to be a bit on those companies. Sorry if you can hear my dog, is going to be to help people more intelligently use these systems. And companies too are going to have a lot more urgency as well, because a lot of companies I'm seeing are banking their whole strategy on agentic flows and even getting rid of huge swaths of their employees to go all AI. But it seems short-sighted when you consider how we have all of these unanswered questions, how expensive this is going to be, which means people are going to need more training than ever on how to work with these systems intelligently, so they're not spending a ton of money doing, very basic stuff. So I think the first thing that comes to mind is, honestly, these companies that are producing these products and then that are ultimately going to be charging at a crazy fee are going to have to take some level of responsibility if they don't want to lose all of their momentum. Because the more expensive it gets, especially when you can't predict usage, I mean, I don't know how companies are going to handle this problem. Really, I don't.
My gosh. Okay. We got to sit in this for a little bit, TK. We got to sit here because when does it get so expensive? You're like, it's cheaper to have humans.
Yeah, at what point does that not
No.
become true anymore?
Yeah, it's true. It's interesting because true talk here. It's interesting that I see so many people who are not just terrified of AI from the perspective of it could take my job, but terrified from what if it's a house of cards and it all comes crumbling down? Meaning it can do all these amazing things, but if we can't make it economically viable, is it going to crash and destroy everything? And then, a couple of years ago, we're back way before Metropolis. We're living in the 1800s, right? Because we just ruined everything. So like
Yeah.
there are people who have that kind of fear at a macro level too. And so Casey got me all started on this. I keep trying to think of how I
It's
can go.
fascinating. Like TK,
I
we
keep
right
thinking
now
how I can go.
In Utah, we are almost at a civil war with a
Yeah.
40,000 acre data center.
Box Elder County here in Utah is they're trying to build this giant server farm, and it's like
It's a yeah.
Same
everybody
here
in
in
the
North
city's freaking
Carolina.
out, right? It's like
Protests, petitions, same here. Same in North Carolina.
It's
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah, go. Sorry, Ty, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I'm like, this is like real talk. This is real therapy right now. And it's the first time I've heard people really talk about this stuff from all sides and really have a discussion around it. This has been awesome. So sorry,
yeah.
Todd, keep going.
Well, you got me started on this movie and play quote. So I tried to go back really far this time. I'm seeing how far back I can reach. But my mind actually went to Macbeth this time.
Oh.
So, right, in Macbeth is this guy who wants all the power, right? And so him and his wife are going to go try to murder and slay so that they can become the, king and queen. And there's this line in the play that's stars hide your fires, let not light see my deep and dark desires. Okay, so this is now since we're in the therapy space, basically he's saying, I wish the stars would darken so that no one can see the evil deed I'm about to do, right? So if you have this deep, dark desire when it comes to AI, right? I'm not going to ask you to expose your deep, dark desire on AI here, but if there is something that you wish you could see happen, right? What would that be? Like, how do we how do we get out of the mucky middle that we are right now in this massive transition that's happening?
Sure. Oh my gosh.
Sorry, I got to
Who
come up
thought
with
I was
something
going to have
even
this
older
level of
now than
exposure?
Shakespeare.
It
I'm
really
gonna
is
come back
therapy
even
over
further.
here. It's exposure therapy is what it is. Oh my gosh. If I don't have a job after this, I know who to come after. No, I'm just kidding. I look around us and our infrastructures are crumbling. I don't think you need to have a political standpoint to look at the systems in the US and arguably the globe and tell that our infrastructures as we know it are crumbling around us. It's just an intense time all around. And it kind of harkens a bit about earlier about, we're all here for a paycheck. Most of us, some of us really love what we do in the software space. So I think it's, let it cannibalize itself, let the infrastructure, let these systems fall. I say that really, though, with this real careful desire to also underpin, hope and optimism and to start thinking about what's possible for the world rather than what is. Stop clinging to these old systems. I would love to see AI push us to the point where it is doing a lot of what we've known capitalism to do so far, which is create a productive society around us, to free us up, to focus on much larger, much more pressing issues that we're all facing, as a species in this world, to free up those brain calories. And I think, I look at the fact that 80% of US consumerism, at least this was Bank of America study, I want to say in 2022 or 2023, 80% of America's wealth consumerism, right? You look at what happened during the pandemic and how the administration responded to the huge break in money, like consumer flow into the economy. And so this is issuing, printing money and filling Americans' pockets with money to go encourage them to spend, right? And so I think about all of this. I think about the history of our country, the fact capitalism is so embedded into our infrastructure. And I think this might just be the thing that breaks capitalism, right? If it cannibalizes so fast, and let's say we work out our infrastructure issues, I have high hopes that it'll challenge companies to push sustainable energy measures because that might be quicker than trying to update the grid, which is what our current administration is talking about, is how do we update the grid? And I'm thinking, how do we turn over the grid? So I'm wondering, will AI actually fuel sustainable innovation? Will it fuel sustainable technology and how we get energy because the demand pushes us to go there? I also think more layoffs continue to happen. At what point does the government step in and provide universal income because it's a requirement for our society to function? It's not a nice to have. It's actually how our whole economy runs and supports so much of the other economies in the world. Dark secret out, it's like, yeah, go ahead. Maybe AI will just make it a lot faster. It'll all crumble and we can build something much better that better serves all of humanity as a result, and have this technology really serving us and the planet versus, slaving away for the technology. And so that's why I got on board. But I do think you have to have the willingness to think about what's possible and not what's been, and be a dreamer in this era and have some optimism. And obviously that can't just be performative. It has to really show up in her. So
Talya, okay.
exposure therapy. There we go.
I'm so glad I asked for your deep, dark desire. Thanks for letting us dim the stars for a little bit. Okay, here.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to say though, real fast, that I think is awesome, because for those of you who maybe are like not sure how you feel about Talya's honest, transparent answer here, for me, I was having a conversation with an executive just like a couple months ago at a different company, and we were talking about the fact that one of the things that is potentially really exciting, right? You can choose to be freaked out or you can choose to be excited. One of the things that's potentially really exciting is if you think about the way that if we view the world and the way economies work and the way monies move and all this different stuff, we tend to view it on this kind of on a linear line, and there's, go really far one way or you go really far the other way. And that's that one line. But AI could break that and give you an entirely new dimension of how you actually approach it. So yeah, sure, we might still have very, between capitalism and communism as an example of that spectrum, going one way of how you manage the world economy. But now you could break out of that linear fashion and build something entirely new. So that is potentially exciting. Now, if you don't want to get into the politics of it all, there is something really true about AI regardless, which is that oftentimes we tend to get stuck on a linear plane with our thinking. And most people treat AI that way, right? they treat it as a way to stay on the path that they're currently on, but just move it a little bit faster, right? Like, I need to send this email, but I want you to draft it for me. So that's the way you're using AI. Or I want to search and Google's slow, so I'm going to, ask AI instead because it'll find it better for me. Well, if all you're thinking about with AI is like how you get these marginal gains and staying on the same plane that you're on today, that's not where the excitement is. The excitement is breaking free of that plane and moving into a new, maybe plane's the wrong word. I mean plane, not like an airplane, plane like a flat plane.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Am I
Yeah.
rambling too much in a weird way?
No,
But that's
that's
I was
really
trying to
well
figure
said.
out
Thank you.
how to help people realize that, like, you're not talking about a dystopian future. You're talking about how do we create a world that's like that we transform it into something way better. And there's this
Yeah.
like really great opportunity to do that. So hopefully
Yeah.
we can do that rather than panic
Yeah.
and freak out and
Yeah.
run
Who
and
wants
scream.
to live in this boiler room right now? Right? You have economic scarcity, you have employment scarcity, you have environmental scarcity, you have political instability. It's a really, we're in a pressure cooker right now. So I do think that who wants to live like this, right? So why not dream of something better that really is in service to all of us,
Man, so much to think about. There's so much to think about as I contemplate everything that we've discussed today. What I hope breaks, and this is going to sound contrary, but I hope what breaks at some point is the need for humans to be humans again. I
Say
really
more
hope for
about
that. I really hope for that. I really hope that we start to understand that technology can do so many great things, but if it doesn't fulfill human purpose, if it doesn't fulfill human need, then what good is technology? So I feel like at times as a society, we're either all in or all out. We're all the way over here or all the way over here. And I think what I'm hoping for is this might bring, and I'm going to do a Star Wars reference, it might bring balance. I'm really hoping for
Oh,
that.
you had to go older than the
I
1600s.
know I couldn't go
I
older
pushed
than
us
that.
all the way back to Shakespeare, man. You
I couldn't
can't
go
bring it
older than
back to the
that.
1970s.
I don't have that in there, and
Oh,
I wasn't gonna hurt the Carmen by doing a AI prompt to try to help me with that. But I really do hope that we can come back to and center ourselves around why we need each other. Because right now you see a lot of organizations investing so much in AI that they're laying off people because AI is going to do what they need them to do. And I think we're losing track of people. And how could we accomplish what we're trying to in a better way for everybody, right? And I think that's the part that's meeting, which is, capitalism is sometimes the greed gets super fast, super quick. And we start thinking about all the ways we can make money off of this versus how do we push what we're really meant for, which is, becoming the best versions of ourselves. And technology is an accelerator to help us with that. It's going to be fascinating. It's a wild ride. And I hope that I can stay curious. I think that's the biggest thing that I've challenged myself around in all aspects is just to remain humble and curious and keep wondering, keep dreaming. Don't get down the fear-based approach where nothing good comes out of that. But how can I be a bridge? How can I be a healer? How can I be someone that is a leader in this space that sees all points of view? And I've loved this conversation because it's been just that. It's filled me with a little fear, but it's filled me with a lot of hope. And I'm like, okay, how am I going to battle with this? And how am I going to walk away thinking more about it? Which I think is what the goal of this podcast has always been. How do I get someone to walk away thinking differently and questioning the way that they're approaching things to see, hey, is it right, wrong? Could I do something better? So this has been awesome. I've really all aspects
well,
of it.
Casey, our last question that we always ask people. So Talya, get ready for this. Here it comes. I'm going to give you prep for it. But I always take a homework assignment. After your little statement there, Casey, I'll be your human friend. And my homework is I'm going to come give you a hug. Okay. I'll give you a hug, bro. I'll be
The
good.
drive the whole hour.
Yeah. So, yeah. So Talya, so this is SaaS therapy, right? Every good therapy session, you got to do something different, right? You got to be willing to commit to do something that's
Yeah.
going to help you change. So if you could give our audience one homework assignment based off this conversation, what would it be?
Do a thinking exercise, or rather throw away the thinking and sit down with a journal and a pen or a voice memo and just, what is the world you dream of? What do you dream of? What's possible? Spend some time there, especially if you're afraid. what world do you want to live in? And I think to spend some time there would feel really good. And we need more people thinking about what we want for ourselves, because when these things come to a breaking point, we're going to need people with those answers. So thinking about that, I think, is really important. It might help shut that fear off and turn your prefrontal cortex back online.
Maybe help you imagine how you can help create that better world, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Talia, so good. So good. Thank you for joining us today on SaaS Therapy. For those of you who are new, we do this every week. Come back every Wednesday. You can listen to me and Casey rant on about whatever thing we come up with. This week was weird movies and plays, but we'll see. Talia, if folks want to get a hold of you, find you on LinkedIn or any other ways that people can connect.
Reach out anytime. If you think that I am crazy wrong, I'd love to hear from you. If you want to double click onto anything I've shared, I'd love to hear from you. I love to be wrong. It's the best way to stay curious. So yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn anytime. And Todd, Casey, thank you. I didn't expect to have this much fun or to disclose so much of my inner feelings. So this is really SaaS therapy.
Good. Thanks so much, Talia. And thanks everybody as always, and have a great rest of your week. SaaS Therapy is brought to you by Brainstorm, the SaaS platform for SaaS adoption. Learn more at brainstorminc.com.